Powered by Sports Interaction, Canada Sportsbook.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Game Over Winnipeg. My name is Brady. On a night where the Winnipeg Jets eke one out, they win 3-2 over the Tampa Bay Lightning. I will be joined here tonight by my fantastic co-host, which will be Brian Finlayson. He does a lot of writing for the hockey writers for the Winnipeg Jets as well as the Kraken, but we're not going to talk Kraken tonight, of course. And he's got his own podcast, Level Flight Podcast. Please be sure to check it out, especially if you're a Jets fan, which I don't know why you'd be listening to this if you're not. But anyways, Brian, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Definitely, thriving on that win a little bit there at, a couple of games where, maybe they don't, you don't expect them to get those 2 points there, but, it's obviously great when you get them. So getting the 2 points in a very difficult stretch there, just, you can't get enough of that.
For sure, I completely agree. And as you said, like I'll be honest, I didn't expect the Jets to get 4 points on this, the first two games of the road trip here in Florida. And I am going to use this as my segue to say, want to bet? Because I didn't know that was how it was going to go. But hey, get in on the action at Sports Interaction. The boys of summer are back on the diamond and March Madness is on deck. Bet pregame, live, and player on one of our many prop bets. Sports Interaction makes it easy to deposit, play, and cash out. Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN or in Ontario, download the app now using the QR code at the bottom of the screen, 19+. Please play responsibly. There are resources in the description. Please consult those if you have any issues with that. Anyways, now that that's out of the way, we can talk about this, a game where I really, I don't think you could have asked any Jets fan, going into the third period, up 3-2. Where were you at going into that third period? What did you expect to happen? And as the period went on, did you end up kind of slowly changing your mind on it and thinking maybe the Jets can pull this one out?
Honestly, yeah, the longer we got into the period without there being like a crazy, crazy push from Tampa, I started actually thinking that they were doing a good enough job holding them to maybe the lesser chances and everything. And really up until that last little bit there, especially once the goalie got pulled and things got a little bit, insane there. And then there was those few little scrums in front of the net. But yeah, I found that sort of at the end of the second there when there was the 5-on-3, but even after that, like the momentum didn't swing that much, but I was still overly concerned that they'd, take some energy from that, go into the break, and then they'd come out and just start pummeling them with shots. And honestly, it felt a little bit more balanced, a bit more than I had anticipated, and obviously that benefits the Jets. But no, I really anticipated there to just be an insane push and them to get like 20 shots in the third or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was sitting there, right with you. But I think one of the things that the Jets actually did well tonight, and this is one of those things that doesn't really show up on the the advanced stats metrics and this and that, but I think the Jets did pretty well at limiting like the danger of the types of shots that the Lightning were having. The Jets were good at keeping them to the outside, I found, and then even when they were, obviously it's a Jets game. They're going to have a lot of, gaffes and, opportunities where the Lightning are going to have some pretty clear shots. But I think the Jets did really well at making the load, even though it was a significant amount of shots that Connor Hellebuyck faced. I thought that the quality of the shots, there weren't like a lot of like screen shots or anything like that. I felt like Connor Hellebuyck had a good view on all of the goals, or not all the goals, sorry, all the shots, which significantly limited the goals here. And speaking of Connor Hellebuyck, guy plays last night, faces 48 shots, and at this point in the season, it's not a crazy surprise to see him playing back to back. Did you expect him to play back to back? And obviously you have the benefit of hindsight, but what did you think of that decision, maybe at the start of the game versus how it ended up going?
Yeah, I was curious if he was going to, because there's a sort of way that things go with him where if he's in the middle of a bit of a struggle, he always wants to kind of take things into his own hands and try and get himself out of that. So I had a feeling he was going to start just so he could really try and get himself back into that groove. So when I got the notification that it was him, it didn't necessarily shock me. With the fact that he came out and played as well as he did, he was solid on everything he needed to stop, solid on the stuff that, was getting through to him that maybe shouldn't have. So I think it's a matter of him trying to find his game again, because he had a bit of a rough stretch over the last couple of weeks, and also it revealed a lot of cracks in the team as well, with him not playing out of his mind every single night. But it shows when he does play out of his mind and he's back into his his groove. He can quite literally swing a game in a team's favor. So having him play on back-to-back nights and face 83 shots and come out with 4 points, that's just, it says a lot about him when he's at his best, right? So you're seeing what happens when he decides that, I need to work on something here. And I actually do wonder if he went to the staff and say, let me have the second one here, because I feel good. I don't feel too tired, and I really want to help the guys out here. So it wouldn't shock me if he did that, because he doesn't like to admit defeat, and it wouldn't necessarily be that, but I think he wanted to sort of say, no, I am the best. Let me show you.
I want to play Vasilevsky and duel him out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I completely agree on, I think you hit the nail right on the head, and I also would not be surprised if he went to Bones and the staff and said, let me have this one, but I feel like he does that all the time anyways. And I think it was the right decision. I mean, I just don't see the Jets winning this game if David Riddick is in net. David Riddick hasn't been he hasn't been bad per se, but he definitely is, no Connor Hellebuyck. And I think a very key point of this game was that 5-on-3, where I think Hellebuyck faced like 7 shots on just that power play alone, I want to say. And he is the team's best penalty killer. There's a reason why the Jets penalty kill is so high in the league this year, and he is a big part of that for sure. So I thought it was the right decision as well. Moving on, obviously tonight the Jets come in with a bit of a bruised lineup. No Josh Morrissey. Obviously, we knew there wouldn't be any Pierre-Luc Dubois. But I would love to hear your thoughts on how Dylan Sandberg stepped back into the lineup. What you thought about the D pairings. They ended up going not putting like Stanley and Sandberg together, and then moving Schmidt to with DeMello to kind of take Morrissey's spot. I'd just love to hear what you thought about the D pairings, as well as, you can even touch on maybe Vlad Nemestikov up front, but, I'll let you go wherever you want with that.
So I've been a huge supporter of Dylan Sandberg, and there's a good reason for that. Like, he's just been absolutely, lights out as such a solid defender at this point in his career. So seeing him come back in and then immediately get to play with someone like Dylan DeMello, you get to see him really, he's earned that chance, right? So I thought he looked really good. I thought that honestly, the defensive group, for the most part, I thought did fairly well at containing the big guns from Tampa. Didn't start off too well with the whole debacle at the beginning there, with the bad pinch, and then Schmidt having to defend 2-on-1 down low, and then that whole thing was a bit of a nightmare to start. But from that point on, for the most part, I actually thought that the defensive group, with sort of how shaken up it was, I think they were solid enough, is what they needed to be. They didn't have the support of Morrissey taking over or anything, but they let everyone else sort of do their jobs, and they held it together. And I know you mentioned Nemesnikov, and I think honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of the deal at the time, and I still think in the context of things, it's still a little bit questionable. But in his short time here, I've been very impressed. I liked what I've seen. He puts up. He's not going to put up a lot of points, but I mean he's done a bit in the last few games here. He had 3 points yesterday, so you see that Niederreiter, he has been a shot in the arm for this team. He's I've always really liked him as a player, so getting to see him in this group now and succeeding, and being that guy who can get you that goal when you need it, That's really, it's something that I've wanted for a long time, and then to have him on the team now, it helps. So those guys contributing is an absolute, lifeline for the team, because bringing two guys in and maybe them going on a bit of a cold streak. And I know Nino has had a reputation of being very hot and cold at times. So him being hot right now is a really good thing. But having both of them putting up some points is great. And then for the rest of the forward group, it takes a little bit of a burden off of the top guys there as well.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Nino and Nemesnikov when they came in is that I feel like they've kind of given the Jets a new dynamic that they haven't really had in their, especially in their top six right now. One of the most frustrating things throughout, the really long skid that the Jets had there was that it almost felt like things weren't working, but then at the same time, you could kind of go, when things aren't working, the Jets don't seem to be working hard. Like the one thing that at least Nino and Nemesnikov bring is that even if they're not going to be, the hottest players, even if they're not scoring, they're battling in the corners, they're getting their puck battle wins, which I find some of the guys on the top end of the Jets lineup tend to not do as well. So at least they provide value in a different way. And I think that just having someone who can go into the corner, battle hard, and, get the puck and move it out front to somebody else is something that was kind of needed in that Jets top six. And actually that kind of leads me to my next thought. As I said, the Jets are a little bit bruised up right now. They don't have everyone, playing. Obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois is out, Cole Perfetti's out, Adam Lowry's banged up. When the Jets, supposedly get completely healthy, if that ever were to come, how do you think that you would roll out those top six, or at least the top nine? I think that we kind of have to discuss it as a top nine, and then the top or the bottom, three is whoever. Who do you think stays in your top six? And this is your, I'm asking your opinion. I'm not asking what you think ends up actually happening. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on how that would shake out if you were coach.
Yeah. My thing, and it's been like this way for a while, is I am a huge proponent of putting Connor, Dubois, and Ehlers back together. Just because they've been, in the past, they've shown that they can do a lot. Essentially Connor, Dubois, and either Ehlers or Perfetti, and at their full strength, if you have one of those two, both of those lines have shown a lot of, promise, a lot of success. And I noticed that a lot of some of the offensive struggles happened when those guys sort of moved around, whether it was through injury and stuff like that. I think there's that. And I think what you do is you run Scheifele, Niederreiter, and then I don't exactly know. There's a few guys that you could try in that that one winger spot in the top six there, where you might be able to get some more offense. I personally think it's time to give Blake Wheeler a bit of a bump down the lineup a little. He's been fighting it a lot, especially since he came back from injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think that having him on a line, a little bit lower in the lineup that might have a different look to it might be better for what he can provide now. But if you run like either a Barron or a Nemestikov with Scheifele and Niederreiter, you get a bit of a different look there. So, and then when you would have, a wealth of options for that, bottom six essentially now, because we've cornered the market on, all defense with a little bit of offense wingers. So, no, but I truly think that the key to everything is finding those ideal lines, which they seemed to have tapped into early enough in the season and then went away from. And then it's keeping them together, right? Because you don't want to, that was an issue, especially with the last coaching staff, where you have something that maybe struggles for a few games and then you get away from it immediately, just as they might be starting to show something. Stick with something for a little bit, and if you're actually seeing something that says, oh, I should maybe keep this together, keep it. Don't try and rush to conclusions. I know obviously it's late in the season here, but the best thing you can do is find the guys that actually seem to have some chemistry, and then eventually something's going to work, right? I'm actually curious, obviously my bump Wheeler down the lineup and keep Perfetti in the top six has not always been the most agreed upon opinion on the internet, which it happens, but I'm curious to see what yours would look like.
Yeah, I I've always been a proponent of the play two guys who play well together and then give them a complementary piece type of thought. I do, of course, lick my lips at the opportunity of seeing Ehlers, Dubois, and Connor together, because that line was fantastic when they were together. Like, they were great, and then it didn't go great for 1 or 2 games, and then it got broken up, and we've never seen it again, right? So I'm not against that. Obviously my big thing is Blake Wheeler just can't be in this top six at all. Like, that's that's a non-starter for me. But what I think is important is just getting the most you can get out of those top two lines. And so what I would probably end up doing is trying to find a way that you can, Nick Ehlers has been a bit of an enigma this year. When he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. And we're both, Jets Twitter guys, so we're always going to bang the drum for Ehlers. But I think it's also just about putting him, as well as the rest of the guys, in the right situations. And I think, like, I've really liked Vlad Namestnikov so far with Ehlers. I think that they play well together. I'm not saying that, Vlad Namestnikov necessarily should be there, but in a world where maybe Perfetti isn't back yet, I would certainly say that, if Dubois slots in back into the lineup, I would probably do something with, like, I don't know, maybe like Scheifele, Nino. I feel like Scheifele and Nino have to be together. I would probably do Scheifele, Nino, and Ehlers to start, and then I would probably run Connor, Dubois, and then Namestnikov maybe. But regardless, no matter what, I think you can mix that around and see what works. But I really like what Namestnikov and Ehlers have done together. So either putting them together with a centerman who can also do well. I don't know if that's Dubois or Scheifele, because Dubois and Connor have worked together. It really is just a puzzle, about just trying to figure out where those pieces fit. But I can sure as hell say Blake Wheeler is not a part of the top six. I'm just trying to think here. I mean, this was a really interesting game. And going up against the Lightning, they are, one of the best teams in the league, of course, and they have been for so long. And playing against them, obviously, my brain goes to, okay, how are the Jets going to fare in the playoffs? Early on in the season, things were going great. Everyone was banging the Jets drum, saying that they're going to be one of the teams to contend this year, and then things don't go as great. I'm curious where you sit right now as to, one, will they make playoffs? Two, what do you think they can actually do? Do you think this team can actually put something together and make some sort of run out of it? Or are you a little bit less optimistic on this group?
Well, I do think they're going to get in, purely because it doesn't seem like Calgary can scrape together anything right now either. And I mean, Nashville's hanging around, but at some point, all that weight on Saros isn't gonna, work as well. And so essentially, it's a matter of don't beat yourself and hope that those teams don't miraculously somehow figure it out in the next little while. But once they actually get in, I think the issue for me is less so what they can do just based on their skill level alone. It's what they can do against the potential opponents. Like, I actually, out of all of the potential first round dates they might have, I think I'd feel best against Dallas, which is weird because they're top of the division. I wouldn't feel comfortable against Colorado for obvious reasons. I wouldn't feel comfortable against Minnesota. It's a matter of the fact that they just haven't shown well against them, and they're at a full strength lineup. I don't know if they can compete necessarily with a Colorado. That being said, they also have an all-world goalie who has shown the ability to steal games. So I think that if things click in terms of whether it's injuries, same with lines, if they can go into the playoffs on a bit of a run there with somehow the offensive gears are clicking a little bit more, and you're actually you're getting the saves, you have a bit of momentum. Maybe they manage to win around on the backs of Hellebuyck and just things going right. It feels a little bit far-fetched to think that they are on the same level as some of these other these other teams that are coming in against them. Like even in the Pacific, like I'd worry about playing for obvious reasons again, McDavid and Draisaitl. Um, I mean, I know you said we're not talking Kraken, but I watch a lot of them. They worry me purely because they can outscore all of their problems.
Yeah.
So teams that can do that, they're a bit of a wild card for me. So you got that. Vegas, honestly, I still have no idea what to think of them because Jonathan Quick's come in there and won 3 straight games. So they're one of those teams that defies the expectation that they might regress. So it's really a matter if there was a bit more clarity on who was actually someone that the Jets could line up against well, I would feel more confident in saying, oh yeah, they can win around. But I feel like it's very circumstantial.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of what you said there. I find it very funny that you did mention that you wouldn't want them playing Minnesota. Originally, I was thinking that Minnesota would be the team that I would want them to play just because I think they're not as good as the Stars. But, as soon as you said it, my brain just went, yeah, I don't want them playing Minnesota because it feels like the Jets just can't get it going to play against them. Maybe it's all the guys who are from Minnesota and they, when they go back home, they don't feel as, it doesn't feel as necessary to, try their asses off to get a win. But, who's to say, not me for sure. Let's bring it back to this game. I was just curious if there were any players specifically that maybe we didn't necessarily chat about or anything in specific that you wanted to maybe, shine a light on, anyone you wanted to talk about. Was there any notable performances here tonight that we haven't really talked about too much?
Well, I mean, I've been on the Morgan Barron has more to give train for a while. And I think we're actually in the last few games, we've been really seeing a great effort and there's a bit more of the offensive sense. And I thought he had a strong game tonight. Like, I mean, he had the goal there that was reviewed and then it stood. Once again, I have no idea what and what isn't goalie interference. I didn't think it was, and I'm actually shocked that I was right that I properly predicted the call. But no, I thought he had a very strong game. I thought he was sort of in and around the net all night. He was very opportunistic when he actually scored. So I think it's also he's put together a string of performances that I've been actually quite happy with. And there was a point there where it felt as if he was almost getting discouraged because he went a stretch there where he didn't really seem to be producing much. Now, last few games, I find that he's constantly in the mix offensively, and that might be because he's had some different line mates, bit of a little shuffle around with Nemesnikov in there. Maybe he's the key that he just needed a different center than Adam Lowry, because it's not necessarily a knock on Lowry to say he's not an offensive guy, but I mean Nemesnikov isn't the most offensive. He's just a different look, right? So.
Mhm.
I did though. I definitely I took note of Barron's performance and some guys in the bottom six that sort of don't necessarily have the light on them all the time, but no, Barron was out there for me.
For sure. I'm glad you mentioned him because he would have been my guy if you threw it back to me. Yeah, I think that he's been playing, and especially over the course of the Jets kind of skid there. I feel like he has been constantly one of the Jets players that has always been in the mix, has always been at least playing hard. And, I feel bad giving out like participation trophies for just guys who play hard, but sometimes it's so frustrating the way the Jets play that you can't help but go, at least this guy is actually cares about what's going on. And I feel like he for a long time was kind of snake bitten, and then more just recently I feel like he's just been getting a lot more luck than he used to be getting. Obviously he puts himself into a good position to score that goal, but he is lucky that the puck juts out to him and Vasilevsky's flying off to the side. But he put himself in that position. You make your own luck. So I thought he had a fantastic game, and I agree with you that he's had a good string of games in the past. A good little shout out to Mason Appleton. I thought he had a fantastic game tonight too. He was, just kind of flying out there. Sometimes it's easy to get mesmerized by the speed, but again, he's the one who creates that goal that Morgan Barron scores there, and all night it just felt like he was kind of flying. He also gets the he probably would have scored if he weren't hooked, but he draws the penalty that leads to the Jets' first power play goal. So honestly, like, great play tonight by the bottom six, and then obviously I know we already talked about him, but Dylan Sandberg looked fantastic, and I feel like I'm only going to mention this now because I didn't really have a chance to. I skipped over it, but I think that he's providing a new option in the defensive system. Like, I feel like him playing with Dylan DeMello tonight. Like, they were as a pair, 68% on their expected goals, and they were playing some pretty decent matchups here tonight as well too. And I feel like it is a little bit ridiculous that Logan Stanley has been in the lineup over Dylan Sandberg in the past, especially considering the whole trade request thing. What were your thoughts on that? I'm just curious what you think about Logan Stanley. Do you think Logan Stanley has any ground to stand on to request a trade? And what did you think about, Chevy maybe not moving on from him quite yet?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, I just want to make a point in saying that Sandberg really should not be a rotation guy anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as you said, like he's shown that he should be in that top four, or in that top, or just even just like the group, just like you actually having, the ability to just play without having to worry about, oh, I made, one mistake and then that's it. He has earned the right to remain in the lineup, and I think that's important to remember, especially because early in the season there was the talk from the coaching staff that you had to earn your right to play. He's done that, and I still don't understand why he's the rotation guy still.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of Stanley, personally, I feel as if he's played better in his limited action this year than what we've seen, but I still don't think he's got enough ground to say that he deserves more playing time. He's been beaten for the job, time and time again. And the only reason he's getting in there is either injuries or some questionable rotation decisions. And ultimately, I think what needs to happen is, I mean, they should have seen if there was a way to maximize the value right around the deadline. Might see something around the draft now, especially if Sandberg ends up, getting more play time. You don't see Stanley down the stretch at all. I think that you're looking now at a situation where it might become more of a priority, especially if you are confident that the rest of your defensive group can, cover that part sort of a little bit more reliably than he can.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. I feel like every time I ask you a question, you say something, and I just go, I agree. Um, I'm just trying to think here. Like, I'm not too sure where to go with this from here. I mean, tonight was a very interesting game for the Jets. Where I see Rob Sutton in the chat saying Morrissey maybe on Tuesday. I'm not sure I'm not sure if anything has come out specifically on a time table for Josh Morrissey, but barring any sort of change, I would expect pretty much the same lineup. Yeah, I'm not too sure. Like, I'm not too sure what even to ask you at this point. I feel like we've kind of talked about everything, but we kind of glazed over the game a bit. I mean, we just kind of mentioned that the Jets did pretty decently well against the Lightning. Sorry, it looked like you were about to say something there. Did I cut you off?
No, it was just I did see that. I mean, obviously Morrissey's day to day, which in hockey could mean we'll see him next week. But I know as well there's talk that Dubois might join the team in Carolina. He was skating today. So that's something to keep note of. It seems more likely that he just comes back in against Boston when they return home, but it's something to keep an eye on, especially against a team like Carolina. If you can get the reinforcements back, that will be very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And funnily enough, the Carolina Hurricanes have lost their past two games, getting shut out in both of them. Do you think that there's a possibility that the Jets could roll in and hand them their third shutout in a row?
I at this point I wouldn't be shocked. It's just one of the because I can only assume that you're getting Hellebuyck again. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna hope that he gives you a chance to keep in the game because Carolina is a very notable volume shooting team. They're gonna put everything at the net possible. But what they've also shown is they can give up a lot. So there's been several games this season where they've like doubled the shots of their opponent and lost. So you're looking at a situation where you could come out with 2 points, even if you're giving up a lot of shots. But as you said earlier, like about tonight's game, the quality is what matters, right? So you can throw as much as you want from the point. If you're not getting the shots right in close necessarily, it doesn't matter as much. So if they can manage to keep them a little bit out of the danger areas, I think they have a legitimate shot at finding a way to beat Carolina. That said, I wouldn't necessarily say that with the utmost certainty, because Carolina is, I honestly think they're somehow flying under the radar. I think just purely because of how good Boston has been.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not necessarily talked about, but I think they're sitting second in the East right now. So it's not necessarily a game that you can confidently say they can go in and find a way to win. Good teams win, and they have done a lot of that this season out in Raleigh.
For sure. From what we're seeing here in chat, Noah Lafort pipes in and says Bones said earlier today that PLD won't be playing on Tuesday, so I pretty much expect almost the exact same lineup. Here's a little question: what is Stanley worth? Can you even get a fourth for him? What do you think on that?
It's interesting because there's a difference between what we might view him as and what the league might. He is a younger defenseman with a lot of size, and has shown in his junior days that there is some offense there. And you have to wonder if that fetches like a, as that was in there, a fourth. Maybe it could be a situation of a prospect for prospect swap.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know Stanley's not really a prospect anymore, but young player for young player, where you see certain teams looking to find new homes for guys who didn't necessarily work out as well. So maybe you can fetch like an unproven talent to see if either even to help with the Moose, or maybe they have something that they can offer you. Pick wise, I can't see it being any high above a third or a fourth.
Yeah,
just because he hasn't played a lot. There's been injuries, and normally when there's a trade request, it forces people to look a little bit deeper. And if they do look deeper, perhaps they don't see that value as much as maybe it looks like on the surface.
for sure. All right. Well, you know what? That's pretty much a show here. I'll be honest with you. I think we did pretty good here. I'm gonna lose you on Zoom right away, so that's why I'm wrapping up. But you know what? Brian, why don't you plug everything you got going on? Let everyone know what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah. So, I'll start with the podcast, because it's a Jets podcast. Me, Connor Hrabchak, and Elliot Russenhold. Connor's actually been on the show already as well, with Liz. And we have a weekly podcast we put out called the Level Flight Podcast. You can follow us on everything at Level Flight WPG. We just put out a new episode a few days back. Going to be recording at some point early this week with a guest. So that'll be fun. Can't say who yet. Well, you have to stay tuned. But no, we talk about all things sort of Jets related. Have some fun. Bring some guests on. Try to keep it relatively ability to listen in a short amount of time too. So now that we're past the deadline, we're going to try and keep it a little bit shorter now too, so you can listen on your way to work, on your way to school, whatever. And then personally, I write for the Hockey Writers. We mentioned the Kraken, obviously, but you're not here for the Kraken, you're here for the Jets. So I put out usually an article or two per week, so you can keep an eye on that on my Twitter at YWGBrian. But yeah, that's really what's going on for me right now.
Awesome. And thank you so much for coming on here tonight. The Jets will be, as we said, in Carolina on Tuesday, continuing their push for the playoffs. It should be a fun one. Make sure to, if you're here still, please like the stream, follow Brian on Twitter, and follow their podcast at Level Flight WPG. Is that correct, right?
That is correct.
Perfect. And follow myself at NHL Chunky, follow at SDPN Sports, follow at Liz Hood. And yeah, thank you all for tuning in. This was a fun one. Thanks again, not Connor. Jeez, I read Connor's name. I'm sorry, I read Connor's name in the chat. Thank you so much, Brian, for coming on here tonight. And I hope you guys all have yourselves a wonderful week. Thank you all for tuning in.